The world needs to be introduced to the basics of Bible prophecy. And we have Brent Miller in studio with us today, and that's exactly your goal and your motive, right, Brent?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be back here again.
It is a pleasure to have you. The basics of Bible prophecy, and let's just start with the basics, because you have produced a wonderful DVD and or Blu-ray, which I'm holding here, called The Coming Convergence. And this production speaks of Bible prophecy, but in an entirely different way than we usually speak of it.
It does. I have been very honored to be one of the producers of this documentary for Ingenuity Films. And The Coming Convergence is about prophecy. It's all about the final 500 prophecies that are coming together. And we call it The Coming Convergence because they will happen in a very quick succession. They will all converge. In order for this to happen, the world must be structured and set up in a certain way. And we can now look at the world and we can see the world is being structured in this way. The foundations are being laid so that these final 500 prophecies will converge.
Let's stay with that one idea for just a minute, because, you know, I think most of us don't think in those terms. We think of Bible prophecy being quote unquote fulfilled, but we don't necessarily factor in the speed at which it will be fulfilled. And what you're saying here is that things are coming together at an accelerating rate.
At a greatly accelerated rate. Let me step back and discuss, generally speaking, prophecy in a way that might open up a different viewpoint into what prophecy is. The scriptures written over millennia, a couple thousand years, by many different authors, over 40 authors. A book is written at a time. So a book is written, and more than 25%, more than a quarter of what's written in that book is prophetic. It tells you the end from the beginning. In other words, God is telling you what is going to happen in the future, so that when it happens, you know that the source is divine and outside of time, because only God can see the future. So a book is written, and as time progresses, those prophecies are becoming fulfilled. Another book is written, which again talks about the future. And as those prophecies are being fulfilled, that generation sees that the source is divine. And this pattern continues literally for a couple thousand years. The entire scriptures have an estimated 2,500 prophecies. All of them have been fulfilled to date, referring to the past. That's over 2,000 have been fulfilled in exact detail. So even though we are here in time and we're looking at all the scriptures, 2,000 have been fulfilled, 500 have not yet been fulfilled. We look at the past as, well, that's great for that 2,000, but how do we know the next 500 will be fulfilled? Well, we are at the same point in dilemma that every single person throughout all of history has. God has always told every person in history what was going to happen in the future before it happened. And when it happened in that person's lifetime, he now looks back at all these have been fulfilled in the past. So we are at a point where the final prophecies are referring to all the events that will happen at the end of the age. In other words, the end of the final generation. Most biblical scholars believe that final generation has started when Israel became a nation. That is a key point in the starting of the final generation. Without arguing as to the various theories as to what constitutes that generation, 70, 80 years, 120 years, it's relatively moot, because the point is we are in the final generation, and these final 500 prophecies must be fulfilled in that generation. Now, if that generation started in 1948 when Israel became a nation, we are actually at the tail end of that generation.
Yeah, and I would quickly add that a lot of those prophecies have to be fulfilled within the tribulation period. we must be getting very, very close.
Yeah.
If we're down to the last few.
Right, and what we see in these, the final prophecies cover nearly every aspect of the world. They're all on a global scale. They talk about worldwide natural disasters, a worldwide economic system, a worldwide religious environment, and worldwide turmoil, worldwide politics, if you will. And all of these events, the detailed events that will flow as part of these prophecies, they require a certain framework of the world to be set up before they can be fulfilled. For example, the Antichrist, a man who will come up and be residing over this governmental authority, which will have basically oversight over all the other nations on earth. Well, how can that exist today? It can't. You must now structure all the governments to start cooperating with each other. And guess what? The framework has already started. One of the most telling pieces of the framework started with the European Union. Multiple nations. They're still independent nations, just like all the rest of the nations will most likely still be independent nations. They collectively group together and say, we will have a governing, overriding authority. Well, as more of these groups form, eventually there's going to be an overriding authority over all of them. In other words, the whole world. And over that governing authority will be a single man. The Bible refers to that person as the Antichrist.
A kind of global bureaucracy.
In essence, yes. But with absolute power comes absolute corruption. And that's what we see in this man. But getting back to prophecy, all of these events have to happen in very quick succession because there's not much time left if we are indeed at the very end of the last generation. So in order to have these prophecies fulfilled, we need to have all these frameworks in place. Now, these frameworks, as I said, they cover every aspect of the globe. So what I'd like to talk about is just a couple with you today.
Okay.
A couple that are highly debated. One of them is when Jesus was asked, what are the signs of the times? What are the signs of your coming? One of the comments was, there will be more earthquakes in diverse places, different places. And the analogy was given of earthquakes being in labor pains, meaning they will become more frequent and more intense. Now, this has been a highly debated topic, and so I'd like to discuss that a little and remove the facts from the myths. If you consult the USGS, they will tell you point blank, or they have actually released press releases stating that there are, in fact, no increase in worldwide earthquakes. And if you ask them why there's much more data today in earthquakes, they will contribute it to the sensitivity of the sensors. And there's thousands of more sensors being put out every year around the world, and the sensors are becoming more sensitive.
So the appearance of more earthquakes is just an illusion.
It's
caused by more the ability to observe in more places at the same time.
Correct. But let's separate. It's misleading. It's misleading data. Because let's separate the micro tremors, which is not what Christ was talking about. He was talking about earthquakes, which you could obviously feel would be more intense. So we're talking about the intense earthquakes. So what we have done is we have taken all the USGS data we obtained directly from USGS for the last 100 years. Millions and millions of data points of USGS data. We've taken that data, we have downloaded it, we have researched it, we have studied it, we have separated every single piece of data that could not be picked up literally worldwide from the poorest sensor 100 years ago. So that when you strip out all the data of all the sensors, of all the noise from 100 years ago, and only look at earthquakes that have a magnitude of 6.3, and by the way, 100 years ago, any earthquake of 6.3 and higher, no matter where that earthquake existed on Earth, everybody on Earth could feel that earthquake. The sensors could pick it up. The sensors, I say, could pick up that earthquake wherever it happened. So using that as the basis in analyzing the data, I'd like to quickly show you the results of that data. It's relatively
And by
surprising.
the way, you have brought a little clip which we're going to look at, and then we'll discuss it.
Arguably, one of the most commonly discussed natural signs in the end days is the dramatic increase of earthquakes around the world, something that in geological time would be statistically unprecedented if it were actually happening during what many believe is the last generation.
That in the last days there'd be an increase in great earthquakes. Jesus used verbiage that means bigger earthquakes in unusual places. We're looking at things regarding, for example, greater hurricanes, greater typhoons, things that in nature you can sense that things are coming undone. And yet, if you looked at it naturally, you would say, well, this is due to global warming, or this is due to man's bad stewardship of the earth. But yet the Bible said as we approached the end, this is exactly what we would see, which, by the way, that preempts man's involvement.
The scriptures do tell us that earthquakes, specifically earthquakes, will increase in frequency and in intensity.
But wait a minute. Hasn't the U.S. Geological Survey, or USGS, gone on record to state that this is not occurring, that no such increase in earthquakes have been detected around the world?
Because this is such a debated topic, the USGS gave a press release saying that this was not occurring. As a result, we actually decided to take the USGS data, millions of data points, spent months downloading it, analyzing it, graphing it, studying it. The results were absolutely terrifying.
Despite what you may have heard in the past, this is the compiled data from the USGS from over the last 100 years. Keep in mind that we're not talking about the millions of microtremors that can now be detected from the distribution of more numerous and sensitive sensors, but strictly data from the larger earthquakes that can be felt by people beginning at 6.3 and up on the Richter scale, that could be easily detected by early 19th century sensors from virtually anywhere in the world. This data shows what the USGS and other organizations do not want you to see.
It shows that the earthquakes are increasing in intensity and they are increasing in frequency. This is exactly the description that was prophesied.
Well, Brent, that seems conclusive enough to me. And when I think of earthquakes in conjunction with the word in your title, convergence, if in fact what you're saying about earthquakes is true, that's one of the major elements of the convergence.
Yeah, that's just one minor point. But the prophecies, so of 500 prophecies, that's one. And every one of them has to be fulfilled. So there's still 499 plus more prophecies to be fulfilled in the last few days of, this last generation. Now, one of the main frameworks that people are highly debating is this concept of a new world order. Mm-hmm. Now, the term has been used primarily by conspiracy theorists.
Sure. We've all heard it for years. People are saying, when they arch their eyebrows a little bit and say, beware the New World Order. And everybody's been sensitized to that term. Right. And this guy said it, used the term and on this date, and this man over here said it and used it on this date. And I think people are kind of tired of hearing that. Yeah. Oh, I've heard that before. Right. But you've got a different look at it.
Yeah, I think the phrase is probably an inappropriate phrase. It doesn't really reflect what prophecy relates. Prophecy relates to a single overriding governmental authority over the planet. Like we talked about before, in order for an Antichrist to appear, one person over a controlling authority, you have to have all these other cooperating entities lined up. It's not like you're going to have a single world authority with every nation on earth under the control of a certain set of rules. No, every country will have their own set of rules. Every country will be pseudo-sovereign. But when there is a conflict with a overriding authority, such as the European Union with the individual laws of each of the individual countries in the European Union, the European International Court from the EU takes precedence. That is what will happen in the future. And this is the layout that the scriptures do tell us. We can see that happening now. We can see that events are transpiring around the world that is creating this foundation. In fact, the average person doesn't understand the complexities that this foundation has been and is being laid for literally several decades now.
Well, you know, if I can interrupt just a moment, when I see today's generation, you know, the kids from teenage through their 20s, they are 24/7 hooked together with their phones and their computers via the internet. That's something brand new. Now, you know, in a sense, that's almost like a world order in and of itself, a global, if you will, coming together. And we never dreamed. Think back 20 years. Nobody ever dreamed that that would be the case.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the internet for just a moment. Back in 1998, the Department of Commerce in the United States had already predetermined that on October 1st of 2016, the Internet DNS, domain naming system, would be permanently handed over control to ICANN, I-C-A-N-N, so that let's review what the internet really is. It's not also about sharing data. Almost all businesses today, because of the free transport of data around the world so instantly, so fast, nearly all business and all transactions in the world today happen on the internet. If you go online and make a sale, it happened on the internet. The delivery system happened on the internet. So that whoever, step back and think about it, whoever controls the internet controls the world finances. Why would anybody give up control of the world finances, the control of their country, to a third party? Well, that is exactly what the United States did, October 1st of 2016.
ICANN.
Yes.
And I've got it written down here, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers.
Right.
It sounds innocent enough, but what you've got is a ruling authority that has its fingers on every little bit and byte of data, which it can save in the cloud,
Right.
so that it knows everything about everybody, which is a scary thought.
Now, technically, they do control worldwide, regardless of the country, regardless of your nationality, regardless of your laws. They literally, legally have control over all the DNS naming for the planet. Of course, things will continue to stay the way they are, but the foundation is laid so that when politics comes in on a worldwide basis and then says, well, how do I censor this, create sanctions of another country against this? It's literally now pressing of the buttons. And since ICANN has been controlled worldwide, DNS naming has been controlled worldwide to a single entity, all this entity has to do is be under the control of this ruling authority. Once that happens, they now control all transactions, and individual countries like the United States have no control over what happens to them because they previously legally gave up control.
No privacy.
No privacy. So this is one of the effects that's happening with the internet. And by the way, that started over 20 years ago, about 25 years ago, with the government signing over this control and basically going into effect 25 years later. So all of these things that are happening, the average citizen looks at this and says, that makes no sense. Why would any government on earth do this? It's insane. But the governments know something we don't know. They are trying to create not our concept of one world order, but a cooperative unity so that all the governments on earth can cooperate with each other for the purpose of peace and safety. Now, this, of course, we know what's going to happen as soon as the entire foundation is laid for peace and safety. Sudden destruction will come.
Well, you know, we've been watching the controllers at the top speak to each other for the last couple of decades, and they're worried. They're worried about global warming. They're worried about weather changes, for example, that would reduce crop output, and they foresee starvation. They foresee economic collapse in certain areas, and so their answer for all of these problems would be more control. What we need is more control at the top, internationally. Well, that's exactly what the Bible talks about in the last days. In fact, it becomes, the control becomes so localized that one man does the controlling. But you're saying the precursors have to be in place.
Yeah, the foundations are being laid right now. They're being laid for a single world currency so that when this entity is set up, all currency is eliminated worldwide. People will not be able to buy and sell unless they belong to this entity. In other words, in essence, unless they have the mark of the beast, belong to this worldwide currency system. The foundation is being laid for universal religion, which could be a total acceptance of all religion. So if you essentially believe or embrace everything, you believe in nothing. And, you know, economics, religion, politics, all of them are converging right now. The foundations are being laid so that when the time comes, you know, all the remaining 500 prophecies could be fulfilled literally in a matter of years. Let me step back for one moment. And for those who don't understand the complexities of prophecy and the astronomical odds of prophecies being fulfilled, and we've talked about 2,000 of them that have been fulfilled in exact detail in the past, and 500 more happening in the future. Let me give you a couple statistics while we have the time left. Dr. Peter Stoner, who is a chairman of mathematics, has written a number of books. His last book was Science Speaks, Scientific Proof of the Accuracy of Prophecy in the Bible. And it has not been disputed by anybody. His numbers are literally conservative. But when you hear these statistics, they are mind-boggling. Let's just take one event. Let's just talk about Christ's first return. The first time Christ came. There are over 300 prophecies fulfilled. Of the 2,000 prophecies that have been previously fulfilled, 300 dealing with Christ's first return. If you take only 16 of those prophecies being fulfilled in a single man, Jesus Christ, he statistically broke down the odds of every single one of 16 specific prophecies. Then, of course, they are added together, or I would say multiplied together, to create a statistical probability of just 16 of 300 prophecies being fulfilled in a single man. The odds of that are 1 into the 45th power. That's taking one chance in 1 with 45 zeros after it. Now, to give you an idea what that means, and these are beyond mind-boggling. Remember, this is only 16 of 300 prophecies, and that's just 300, never mind 2,000. To give you an idea, if you were to take a massive pile of silver dollars, let's call the pile 2.7 billion miles in diameter of silver dollars. Make it a sphere. That would be a sphere the size of our entire solar system going beyond the edge of Pluto.
Wow.
Right? That is not our planet. That's the entire solar system spherically covering the sun, Jupiter, Saturn, the entire solar system. That would be approximately 1 to the 45th power of silver dollars. Mix all that together if you could, mark 1, and tell a blind person he has one chance to spend his lifetime going all over the entire solar system spherically in all dimensions and pick out a single dollar. What are the odds of him grabbing that one silver dollar that you marked? Those are the odds that Jesus Christ fulfilled just 16 prophecies of the 300 that he fulfilled. So when you compound that with more and more prophecies, we're not talking about evidence in the scriptures that God is who he says he is. At this point, it's no longer evidence. At this point, it's proof. It's absolute proof that the scriptures are divine. They were written from a source that is literally outside of time, who was consistently telling you the future before it happened.
And if you just take the time to methodically study the Bible, it's there. And you have to accept one thing, that the Bible was written over a period of years by different men who couldn't talk to each other, communicate, meaning that they were getting their information from one source to create one book. You have to believe that. And I don't think of that as a leap of faith. If you study and simply look and accept what is there in front of your very eyes, that's it. You become what the world calls a believer. But that, to me, that is not difficult because there's so much proof.
The most compelling things for us today is the events that the Coming Convergence discusses that will happen in the immediate future. These events are not pleasant. These events are horrifying, they're terrifying, and you don't want anybody to go through these events, especially your loved ones. These events are describing the foundations and the platforms that will happen, and a number of them that will come about.
Brent Miller Sr., and he's the producer of The Coming Convergence. We have it as DVD, as Blu-ray, and it's, I think, a first-class motion picture. Beautifully produced, beautifully photographed. The acting in this thing, the dialogue is emotionally moving. And Brent, that's what we need today. I think this is aimed at an individual who's looking, but he hasn't found it yet. Yes. Maybe someone in church who hasn't heard Bible prophecy taught. Maybe someone who's never gone to church. This is an emotionally touching production. You'll be moved, and that's the best thing I can say by this film. It's emotionally moving, and that's where we operate. We human beings basically are emotional creatures, and we need to be moved. And I think it will have the effect of bringing a lot of people into the world of Bible prophecy. And we have this in the bookstore. By the way, order the Coming Convergence, and as a bonus, you'll receive Fire from Heaven. And also, we have the other DVD here, The Coming Pole Shift. These will be included absolutely free with your order. Brent Miller and I, some time ago, produced these, and I'll tell you what, we have sent these to a lot of people. They're absolutely free when you order The Coming Convergence. And we want to thank you for being here today, Brent. It's always great to talk to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Gary.
Brent Miller, Sr., The Coming Convergence. Study it. Learn it. I'm Gary Stearman. You keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.